that has been particularly neglected and abandoned. I represent this area, and it was once dredged every 3 to 4 years to maintain channel depth. It has not been dredged since 2003, and that was a partial dredging. There are portions that have not been dredged since 1998. And so perhaps in the next WRDA, we should just end the charade and come up with a new category for ports that the Army Corps has simply forgotten about or left behind. And I could come up with more colorful terminology if you talk to my constituents, I assure you. The system is not working, and it is in fact insulting to communities that play by the rules and still lose every year, every single time. Now, there are other members who have served longer than I have, certainly on this committee, but this is year 7 for me, and I am already sick and tired of this annual cycle of begging OMB and the Corps during the development of the President's budget request, then to turn around from disappointment to pleading for support through the work plan, and in the end, when no assistance is provided by the Corps, being reassured there's always next year. This is a con game. And I would like to ask unanimous consent to enter into the record letters that I've written, going all the way back to 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, and January of 2019, where we are begging and pleading with the Corps to address these issues. This spans 2 different administrations. It showcases years of failed responses by the Army Corps of Engineers. So, Mr. Chair, I would like to enter into the record 6 of these letters that I have written on this subject.
Without objection.
Thank you. And I would invite the committee to come out to the Petaluma River and hold a hearing on how we are failing small communities, because the witnesses before us today, and I very much appreciate the testimony, but from what I can tell, most of you folks are doing pretty well by the status quo. Ms. Brady, I've been out to your community. Okay.
Riverhead, still another hour and a half away.
Near.
Close enough, right?
Nearby. And I appreciate you've made the point very well how important commercial fishing is to your region. Believe me, as chair of the Water, Oceans, and Wildlife Subcommittee at Natural Resources, I understand that. And I want to see your community taken care of. But in your testimony, you mentioned maintenance dredges in Montauk in 2008, 2012, 2018, and relatively consistent dredges elsewhere in the area. I am representing a community that hasn't been dredged, again, just a partial dredge in 2003, and over 20 years since the entire channel was dredged. I'm sure you can imagine what that kind of lack of attention by the Army Corps of Engineers can do to a community. So if we want to talk about a hearing to showcase the cost of doing nothing, let's come to Petaluma, or let's go to the San Rafael Canal, another part of my district where we've seen similar neglect and abandonment by the Corps of Engineers. I am happy to work with my colleagues and any of you here on ways to fully utilize the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund, but I want to make sure as we go forward that we're also taking care of these neglected and abandoning communities and not simply redirecting more funds to communities that have been relatively well maintained by the status quo. I have a little bit of time left. If any of you have anything you would like to say to the people of Petaluma and other communities, I'm sure, around this country where shallow draft dredge projects have simply been abandoned and forgotten, I will leave the balance of that time to you.
Congressman, it's nice to see you again. That's ridiculous that your constituents should have to go through that. There's no one should have that. I know specifically for Montauk, if there had been a change in the language of what is considered a lesser harbor and a greater harbor, we would have immediately been able to been dredged to a 16-foot depth, in which case we would not have necessarily needed all of the maintenance dredging and the emergency dredging. We had an emergency dredge that was basically like a whaler and 2 straws. It created more damage than it helped. We've dealt with the Army Corps in the past. I know they will ask for the questions at 14 foot, at 15 foot, at 16 foot. If we hit bottom, it's a bad day, and it doesn't matter. It just depends as to how deep it could be. I think, and I'm saying this just on the fly, if we had had the depth at the level that we could have used and that the community had told the Army Corps at that time, we might not have required as many of those maintenance dredgings. And so that's to be had. But no, what your people have gone through, that's ridiculous. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. The chair recognizes myself for 5 minutes. And I'll start by saying that in my weeks-long career in the United